So when George Lucas first came up with his concept of an epic fantasy story set in space, he was no doubt concerned that the technologies of the time would limit his vision. With a combination of practical effects, animatronics, and highly detailed models, however, he pulled it off. And with advancements in CGI, Lucas has had an opportunity to really pull out the stops for his prequel trilogy during early 2000s. And although certain aspects of those movies definitely look questionable, there are still moments that definitely hold up. When he used CGI well, it resulted in some of the most immersive and iconic moments in cinema, and that's what we're here to look at today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 best CGI moments in Star Wars history. Number 10. The Battle over Coruscant. Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3. The original Star Wars trilogy did wonders for the world of special effects. A combination of animatronics and miniature-scale models were used to depict the giant space battles central to the plot. Although the various depictions of the tiny rebel fleet taking on the Empire's monolithic space stations were captivating, Lucas was nevertheless limited on what he could show. By the time that Revenge of the Sith rolled around, he finally had the means to portray a high-speed and complex space battle in a dynamic way. We had literally never seen anything on this scale before. Utilizing his classic pan from space technique, Lucas revealed a Republic star cruiser gracefully moving through space before he locks the camera onto two swooping Jedi fighters. With dynamic dogfights happening in between huge cruisers, the scope was vast. Sometimes the camera zeroed in on tiny buzz droids, and other times it panned wide to reveal the giant battleships turning their broadside blasters on one another. It was one hell of a way to open up a movie. For all of the issues that the prequels had, this scene was definitely not one of them. Number 9. Coruscant Night Chase. Attack of the Clones, Episode 2. Coruscant is one of the most fascinating places in the Star Wars universe. The planet-wide city was only teased in The Phantom Menace, with sweeping wide shots of the upper levels and several interior scenes of the Jedi Temple. But with Attack of the Clones, however, the vast expanse of the city's many levels was explored further. Although the CGI in this scene would appear somewhat dated for a live-action film, it was definitely cutting edge for 2002. Most importantly, it created an immersive experience as we saw two Jedi partake in a high-speed chase to capture a mysterious bounty hunter. Now, in terms of realism, this scene is somewhat lacking, but there aren't many scenes that light a fire in your imagination quite like this, and really, that's the purpose of CGI. As the chase descended into the dystopian cityscape, the world came alive. The lower levels were inundated with smog, aliens, and death stick dealers. What it amounted to was a neo-noir cityscape somewhere between Blade Runner and The Fifth Element, and you know what? That was brilliant world building. Number 8. The BOONTA Eve Pod Race, The Phantom Menace, Episode 1. Now, The Phantom Menace got quite the bad rep when it first released. Sure, Jar Jar Binks was a character we could do without, but the CGI techniques used to generate him were pretty impressive. This will never be considered one of the highlights of Lucas's saga though, but it still contains some iconic moments, and the pod race sequence definitely is a top contender. Now, race and chase sequences can oftentimes feel long-winded, bloated, and tiresome. It's actually a mystery how the Fast and Furious franchise has lasted so long, honestly, but there was none of that with this scene. You had moments of tension, exhilarating high-speed crashes, and character-based drama, all built into 9 minutes of adrenaline-fueled excitement. The nature of this scene gave the animators a huge advantage when it came to generating the images. The mere fact that everything happens at such high speed meant that a blurring effect could be used to hide any sloppy animation, and you know what? It worked. In terms of being an engaging experience, this CGI sequence is up there with the best. Number 7. The Battle of SCARIF. Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Rogue One not only has one of the strongest overall narratives out of all of the Star Wars movies, but it's also the most visually stunning. The CGI effects are simply luscious. There are none of those rubbery textures that give you a really uncanny valley feeling, and at no point does spectacle win out over the plot. Director Gareth Edwards is first and foremost a visual effects artist, but he has such a respect for narrative that at no point did he let himself get carried away. Look at any of the CGI sequences in this movie and you will not find a moment that's anything less than gorgeous and utterly integral to the plot. From the antics of the sarcastic K2 to the destruction of Jeddah, each moment is visual storytelling perfection. But it was the desperate battle above Scarif that really solidified this as one of the most breathtaking films in the franchise. The CGI ships and fighters look so real, it's hard to believe that they weren't actually scale models. Unused footage from the original trilogy was was also spliced into these sequences, serving as a wonderful homage to Lucas's original vision. In terms of the greatest space battles ever put to the big screen, you would be hard-pressed to beat this one. Number 6. The Hyperspace Ram, The Last Jedi. If the sequel trilogy will be remembered for anything, it will be all the moments that were visually awe-inspiring while having zero emotional weight. Vice Admiral Holdo's sacrifice to save the remnants of the Resistance was indeed a tragic moment, but not because the audience felt touched by her bravery, but because a truly breathtaking scene was wasted on a rather nonsensical plot point. Holdo was a character the audiences never really grew attached to, neither did her decision to hyperspace ram a ship make any logical sense in the world of Star Wars. It's for that reason that this entry feels kind of like a controversial one. The moment when thousands of lightspeed particles dispersed through the Imperial fleet was perhaps one of the most beautiful shots in the entire franchise. It's just a shame that the iconic image does not reflect the emotional impact of that scene. This could have been a moment of visually heart-wrenching heroism if only the filmmakers had utilized it properly. Instead, they just awkwardly jammed an admittedly great concept into a very clunky plot. Number 5. Snoke, The Last Jedi. There were many aspects of the sequel trilogy that were brilliant. Initially, the characters were intriguing, there was more reliance on practical effects, and CGI technology had advanced to the point where almost anything could be created. But it makes it all the more tragic then that this whole trilogy was just not as great as the sum of its parts. Now, Snoke was a marvel in CGI. Utilizing the industry's go-to motion capture performer Andy Serkis, the mysterious character was a groundbreaking display of animation and an intriguing original villain. But as we all know, he was rather underutilized. If even half the effort put into making Snoke look as impressive as he does was put into developing a character arc for him, well, maybe the sequel trilogy would have been received far more favorably. It truly is a shame that an artistic endeavor such as this ultimately went to waste, in a trilogy that won't be remembered at all for its stunning visuals, but rather its lackluster plot lines. Number 4. Jango Fett's Seismic Charge, Attack of the Clones, Episode 2. Now, we've already touched on the slightly dated-looking CGI in the prequel movies, but certain scenes still managed to wow audiences. George Lucas really went to town when depicting space combat in these movies, because it was his first time that he wasn't limited by technology when it came to telling a story. Now, yeah, sure, certain CGI moments from the prequels look like shoddy cutscenes from a half-decent PS2 game, but others still have all the visual impact required to sell a scene. And really, that's all CGI should be used for. You can get away with slightly less convincing special effects if they're being utilized in a well-written and engaging scenario, and that is what this moment was. With Obi-Wan hot on the heels of Jango Fett, viewers were treated to a game of cat and mouse in an asteroid field. The delayed sound of Fett's seismic charge as it sent destructive waves through numerous asteroids will forever remain a highlight of one of the, let's admit it, weaker movies of the franchise. Number 3. The Kessel Run, Solo, A Star Wars Story. In 2018, Star Wars finally demystified one of the most infamous legends in the franchise. Han Solo's astrophysics-defying boast that he made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Now, as everyone no doubt is aware, when Harrison Ford said that infamous line back in 1977, it made little sense. A parsec is a unit of distance, not time. Given the Kessel Run was a 20-parsec smuggling route, the more astute audience members were left scratching their heads at Han Solo's claim. The only conclusion was that George Lucas either used the term because it sounded cool without any understanding of what it meant, or that Han Solo wasn't all that bright. Well, we finally found out the answer to the mystery in Solo, A Star Wars Story. By skirting a bunch of black holes, Solo essentially used the Millennium Falcon to travel through time through the route. With an Imperial Star Destroyer looming out of the gloom and numerous TIE fighters hot on his tail, Solo managed to hop, skip, and jump his way through the route before coming into contact with a Lovecraftian space beast. It was simply brilliant. Punch it Chewie indeed. Number 2. The Battle of Kashyyyk, Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3. There's no doubt that CGI has come a long way since George Lucas released the prequels, but if we're merely going to include sequences based on how they live up to the CGI of today, then we'd be doing a disservice to some truly memorable moments of Star Wars. Now, these movies had a certain sheen to them. They didn't feel as gritty as the original trilogy, and they felt almost cartoon-like compared to the sequels, but aesthetically, that kind of works. The prequels were set in a more idealized time in the Star Wars universe, a time when the Empire hadn't cast its dark cloud over the galaxy quite yet, so it kind of makes sense that everything looked a little polished. Now, the Battle of Kashyyyk would look out of place in one of the newer Star Wars movies, there's no doubt about that, but that still doesn't mean that this isn't a great CGI moment. Within the context of the movie, it works perfectly, and was one of the more celebrated depictions of the Clone Wars. Who didn't love seeing Wookiees swinging from fluttercraft attaching bombs to droid tanks? No one. And number 1, Grand Moff Tarkin, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Now, this entry will again raise some eyebrows because the depiction of actor Peter Cushing as Tarkin was polarizing to say the least. And in fact, we've covered it many times on different lists as being some of the best and worst moments of this film, so it's very confusing. We're split down the middle. Now, Rogue One is easily in the top 3 Star Wars movies ever made. Because it contained everything we wanted, it expanded on a significant moment of the originals with a distinctly darker tone, nuanced heroes, and captivating visuals. But one of its most visually impressive moments was also its most controversial. The effectiveness of a fully CGI human character was somewhat hit and miss. When it worked, it was nothing short of breathtaking, but when it didn't work, it was jarring. It was all to do with the framing of the character. CGI Tarkin worked when he was in the shadows, lurking like an ominous force of malice, but when he was brought out into the light, and especially when shown next to real actors, the illusion kind of fell apart. It was certainly the most impressive advancement in computer-generated human characters that we've seen so far, but maybe the filmmakers overplayed their hand. There was also the ethical and moral implications of using the image of an actor who had already been dead for decades. Even with the express permission of the actor's estate, it was a bit uneasy to see a man resurrected and trotted out on screen for entertainment purposes. And there we go, my friends. Those were the 10 best CGI moments in Star Wars history. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules, and you can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, and it'd be great to chat to you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all of the best things in life, alright? I want you to look as good as some of these CGI moments. You are a massive ledge. Now go out there and absolutely smash it today. I believe in you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.